Hello and welcome back to Pride in a Pod, episode 2. I'm so excited. Now, of course, as you guys know, Pride in a Pod is a proudly Namibian-produced podcast series that is just here to inform us about different topics and is, of course, put together by the Namibian Pride Consortium. Now, I'm your host, Miss Mavis Dash, and I'm so excited to be back with today's episode. Now, today, we'll be jumping on into something that I think is so important that we all got registered for. I mean, 91% of Namibia got registered. And if you're wondering, Mavis, what are you talking about? Well, we're talking about Power to the Polls, the name of this episode, and what we'll be doing on the 27th of November. Register to vote, so we're gonna go vote, chomies. So sit back, relax, and get ready for 2 exciting guests ready to talk to us about why it's important for you to vote this election season. So sit back, relax, unwind, kry jou registration kaartjie van Mama Mavis en die span. Hey! Onto the lekker show vir julle. We'll be right back. Namibia held its first free general election from 7 to 11 November 1989. 701,483 people registered to vote, and there was a 97% voter turnout, with 680,788 people showing up to the polls during the election. These elections were the official stepping stones for Namibia's independence on 21 March 1990, which birthed a constitutional democratic nation where all Namibians, regardless of race, gender, background, and age, should enjoy fundamental human rights. The results of the 2023 census state that more than 71% of Namibia's population is under the age of 35, which means that the youth's vote is fundamental to upholding Namibia's democracy and ensuring that those who lead us respect the human rights of all who live in Namibia. Even though the youth make up the largest voting bloc, more than 53%, in the 2019 elections, only 22% of eligible voters were aged 18 to 25. In May 2023, after the landmark Supreme Court case recognized same-sex marriages performed abroad between Namibian partners and foreign nationals, while the LGBTQIA+ community, our allies, and human rights defenders took this verdict as a win for democracy and upholding the fundamental rights for all, some politicians retaliated by creating a discriminatory LGBTQIA+ bill that would aim to limit the rights that were fought for. The Marriage Amendment Private Members Bill proposes that any persons may not enter into a contract of marriage with a person of the same sex. Any person who tries to solemnize, witness, promote, or propagate same-sex marriage would face up to 6 years of imprisonment and a fine of up to 100,000 Namibian dollars, which would directly discriminate against same-sex partnerships and the partnerships between gender-diverse people and criminalize those who support their rights. The majority of the National Assembly and the National Council passed the bill, but will only become a law if the President signs the bill. In June 2024, Equal Namibia submitted a petition to the Presidency and the Parliament, gathering over 10,000 voices calling for these bills to be vetoed. The National Assembly and the President are directly voted for by the Namibian people during our upcoming November elections. And we're back with Pride in a Pod. Now, I know you guys know we love a good insert every now and then, but we're about to insert our first guest in the episode. And I'm so excited because this is someone that I think everyone needs to sit down and chat to. I mean, if you're beautiful, if you're intelligent, if you've got the demure, you just know that she's just a classy girl. So please help me welcome our first guest for today's episode, the beautiful, the stunning Ndapwa Alweendo. Ndapwa holds a Master's of Social Science in Political Theory and works as a gender analyst and editor in Namibia. She has over 7 years of experience in civil society, journalism, and policy analysis, and her work contributes to greater access to information and social justice. She's the project coordinator at Sister Namibia and hosts the Youth Manifesto podcast. The Youth Manifesto is a podcast to help Namibians make more informed decisions at the polls. Ndapwa Alweendo, how are you doing?
I am doing amazing. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm gorgeous. You know, it's a little hot, but it's because both of us are in the room.
They need to cater to 2 hot babes. Please be prepared.
You know, it's winter, but we could do with a little bit more cold.
You.
Freeze us, we are your vegetables. But of course, apart from nice laughter, we're here for some serious conversation that, of course, can be a little bit more digestible. But before we get into the nitty-gritties, who are you, beautiful lady? What do you do? Tell the listeners and the people who the beautiful woman in the seat across from me is today.
Such an easy question to answer. So thank you for starting with just like a really softball for me. Who are you and what are you all about? Yes, so my name is Ndapwa. I am a political analyst, journalist, sometimes academic. I currently, one of the hats I wear is project manager at Sister Namibia, which is a wonderful civil society organization in this beautiful country we call home. And we are all about advocacy for human rights. And that is something that's always been a passion of mine. So after studying, I decided to study international relations and political theory, and then I got into feminist theory, and then I got into why do people get mad when we ask questions about what seem to be very basic issues about how society works. And that's kind of led me into the space I am in now, which is just asking the right people the right questions and then trying to get those answers to the public.
I like it. I like it. You take up space whenever you step into a room and like shift the room in the right direction. Because I think a lot of times there's so many like indoctrinated understandings that we have that we don't ask questions about. And I think especially for me as a drag queen, I always say like, because I dress the way I dress, because I present the way I present, why do you automatically think woman?
Exactly.
Who has indoctrinated you so much that a dress must say that? It's
what were you watching and why? Let's just unpack a little bit.
Unpack. Yes.
Yeah, that's my whole vibe, unpacking.
But speaking of unpacking, let's unpack a little bit about what it is that you do at Sister Namibia, actually. What do you do? And I know you guys have some exciting projects that you've been working on. We'll dive into that. But what do you do at Sister Namibia?
So our whole goal is using our digital platforms to advocate for human rights, like we said. So there's a bunch of different ways we do that, and there's a bunch of different themes we address. So, for example, we've done projects talking about sexual and reproductive health and rights, and actually taking the life skills curricula that we use in the country and translating that into like cool and fun and exciting, engaging social media content so that people can have questions answered like, what is PrEP? How do I get it? How do I get a pap smear? Why are these things important? We've done some work looking at the impact of COVID-19 on gender and gender equality in this country. And also a really big part of what we want to be able to do is help people understand what their rights are, how they can claim them, and what to do if they are blocked in some way. Because the goal is to have people be able to take advantage of, we have all these beautiful policies, we have these beautiful laws, and there's these beautiful resources that should be available to everyone. Not everyone knows about it, so we try to be the connector between people who need their rights met and the people who are responsible.
I love that. It's really just making it more digestible. Because I think at the end of the day, there's so much jargon, there's so much words that are being thrown around that you're really just sitting down and you're like, what are these people saying?
Absolutely.
And getting lost in that confusion sometimes makes it difficult to make decisions. And as we're getting ready for the 27th of November to go to the polls and vote, we all know that that's also such a scary time. And you guys have created something so stunning called the Youth Manifesto.
Yes.
And it's a podcast that really like dives into what the political parties are about. And just give us a little idea of like when you guys started it and how it's going so far.
Yeah. So the goal was to kind of challenge the idea that, we're voting based on anything other than, the actual policies and what political parties and political leaders are saying. So often in this country, I think there's a tendency to think like, well, I've been loyal to this party or, my family members are all part of this party and that's influencing how I vote. But I think especially for a younger generation, and I myself call myself a born free. I'm not technically, but that's just between you and I.
It's our little secret.
Don't tell anyone, okay? But for our generation, I think there's a real push towards saying, yeah, but what is your platform?
Yeah.
Like, what are the promises you're going to make? What do you think about how society should look? Because, when we're voting for people and we're putting them in those positions of power, we are essentially letting them guide us into the future. So I need to know what your plan is before I give you that vote.
Exactly.
And so originally the idea was to look at manifestos as they came out during the year and help people sort of stack up different parties against each other. And we looked at 4 key issues, which was good governance and corruption, job creation and unemployment, commitment to ending gender-based violence, and sexual and reproductive health and rights. And I mean, there's obviously so many more topics that we could cover, but we focused in on those 4 and we wanted to see, maybe the 6 or 8 biggest political parties, where do they stand on those issues? And then what we found was nobody had released a manifesto yet. And to this point, like until today, I don't think anyone has released a manifesto, any of the political parties. So it became kind of an experiment to see if I was going to the polls today with the information that is publicly available, who would I vote for? Or how would I decide who to vote for? So we were just combing through archives of, who has their manifesto still available online, like how was the news reporting on it. It was surprisingly difficult. It kind of brought to the forefront the fact that people don't really have access to the information that they would need to
make an informed decision.
Thank you. Yes. So we created a little booklet, which is almost like a little scorecard comparing everybody's stances, or 6 of the biggest parties' stances on these issues. And then we also hosted our own little podcast. Hi.
Love it.
Yeah. Which is also called the Youth Manifesto, which is still up, available on Spotify and iTunes and all of the things. Where we interviewed some political leaders, we interviewed young people, we interviewed experts on things like gender and good governance to really try to answer the question, like, what should you be thinking about in the run up to November 27th, which is, it's a big
day.
It's a big one. It's a big day for us. So that was kind of the project, and so far it's been really well received, and it's also kind of really highlighted the fact that we don't have the information, we don't know what we're voting for, we don't know what to ask even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that just leads me into my next question, because I think it's so important to have like these kinds of like digital footprints of what the information looks like, what the statistics say, and like really just have like a proper understanding. But like I think a lot of times like I wouldn't say like the delivery, but like the length of some of the pieces might be too long. So how do you make that digestible for the youth that maybe sits down and they're like, I don't have time to listen to a 40-minute episode of something to figure out which party. I don't have time to read a little book. How do you guys get through to the youth that might not want to vote? Like, what could you say to them to just really get them to that point where they're like, my voice matters, my vote counts. So what is that?
Let me get involved and let me kind of get motivated. Absolutely. I mean, the goal is really to sort of put elections and voting into the context of this is the only way that we'll actually be able to make progress and to change things. Because I know it's really easy to feel apathetic as a voter. Like I have felt myself, like what's the point of doing it? You know, the status quo is so entrenched and it's so like things just seem like they're not really going to change. But, what I've come to realize and what we try to communicate is there are people who count on you feeling like that to stay in power and to continue to kind of erode the rights and, the civil rights and the human rights that we are entitled to and that are so like beautifully contained in our constitution. But there are people who rely on us saying, oh, what's the point of voting? It's so complicated. And I think that, in a way, it's like, let's be really petty and not let these people, derail the future of the country just because they're trying to make it hard.
Exactly.
What I like about young people is like, we're stubborn. So it's like, if you tell me that I can't and you're going to make it difficult, then I want to do it even more. And so trying to like motivate people that way to say, it feels like it's just a moment every 5 years that you go and cast your ballot, but it's a way bigger conversation. There are things that happen all throughout the voting cycle and the election cycle that are really important, whether it's like your regional and local elections or just being able to participate in like lawmaking and like, debates on public policy. So trying to lay out the electoral cycle as something that you can be involved in more than one way is what's really, really important. And also like, don't let these people take your things from you. This is our Namibia. This is our country. Like we are the bosses of this country.
Please.
People sitting in parliament are civil servants, so they are technically our employees because we pay taxes. We pay taxes.
Guys, please pay your taxes.
So that they can go and do their job. Please pay your tax. Don't do tax fraud. But we do that so that they can, they are beholden to us.
Yes.
They are civil servants. So reminding people that we actually drive the narrative and that we are the ones who are in charge. And that's why we need to go to the polls.
No, I love that. And I think it really just like speaks back to the point of like why voting is so important, because it really gives the people the power back that they've always had.
Yes.
It reminds them of the power they have, because I don't think like there's any time during the year where you will see, or like during the winning spree, that you'll see a political party really do so much.
Exactly.
Like all of these rallies, all of these show ups, like the grandeur that they're creating. I'm like, I don't see that on a daily basis.
See that, like, all, it's in 2023, 2022, people were very, very quiet, and then suddenly it's election year and everyone
Now
is
we're
like,
back.
We've cared the whole time. And I'm like, oh, where?
What did you care about?
When and how and where?
And speaking about caring, I think what's also important is that when we do vote, it's important for us to know who we're voting for, what we're voting, and also understanding that when we do vote for a specific party, when we do vote for a specific president, when we do cast our vote, it of course will have implications with the law. It will have implications with laws that are already being put in place. When we look at the elections currently and we look at all of the things that are in the air, because we know what's been going on.
Yeah.
We've been to court a few times this year, throughout the past 4 years. But when we look at the elections this year, why is it so important this time around for us to vote right now? And what are some of the laws we can look at that possibly could have some ramifications for all of us?
Absolutely. So there's definitely legislation on public gatherings that has recently been tabled, which on paper, it's like, oh, it's just to kind of formalize the process and make, the process of, for example, having a public protest and organizing as your community. The way it's being presented is as if it's just to, make that process a little bit smoother. But we need to be very, very careful about how that legislation is drafted, because our right to protest and our right to gather is a constitutional right that we have. So making sure that there aren't, amendments being put through in that bill or things that contradict our actual right to be able to protest and to gather is really important. The divorce bill is currently in Parliament, or it's being debated or has been debated. And that is one where we're seeing that, like, this weird obsession with marriage and who can get married,
Yes.
and whether all of these like mysterious gay people are all going to get married in the millions. Like, where are all these people who
I
are
was
going
just
to?
like, please show me where they are, because
show
I
me
haven't
where
seen
they
any of
are.
them. We
Yeah.
have drag night very often, guys. Come on.
Like the way that like the divorce bill, for example, is being delayed because people are saying we need to first define what spouse means. And it's really confusing because, it's taken me time also to kind of understand how this works. But, we have a common law understanding of what marriage actually is in this
Yes.
country. So it's very important for everyone to understand that gay marriage has not been legal in Namibia. None of the legislation that is currently being proposed is trying to make same-sex marriage legal. So that's kind of a distraction from the main point. There's a lot of misunderstanding, I think, from our
Misdirection,
lawmakers and
yes.
misdirection from our lawmakers. So the divorce bill is one that's like, it's such an important piece of legislation. It would make leaving an unhappy or unhealthy or abusive marriage so much easier, give protections to people who are vulnerable in those situations, including any children or dependents. And the fact that it's being kind of stalled just so that people can argue about, like, but what does it mean to be a spouse? It really kind of shows that people's concern isn't actually people's safety
Yes.
and healthy relationships, but it's all of this kind of technical stuff. We've been having conversations for years about comprehensive sex education in the country and being able to, ensure that our young people are informed about things like consent and
Yes.
how to access their rights when it comes to their sexual health and reproductive health. Our abortion legislation, which is so archaic and so behind, and also just doesn't work because, abortion is legal in certain circumstances, but we see so many cases of, sexual assault, rape, incest, where an abortion would have been quote unquote allowed or legal in that situation, but there was no way for somebody to access that. So there's a lot of pieces of legislation that need to be updated so that the things that are being promised to Namibians are actually accessible. And they're being held back by people who, lawmakers who claim that, their goal is to really speak for the Namibian people. But if you look at, their words don't always match their actions.
Exactly.
So I think understanding, some of the bills that are being passed or being debated in Parliament is such an important way to kind of decide where you want to throw your support. And that's something we try to do on Sister Namibia. We try to say, this is what's going on in Parliament. This is, the bill on marriage amendments, and this is what it means. This is how it could impact you as a person. It's important for people to realize that, it's not about one particular group of marginalized people in the country. Your rights being, my rights being at risk mean anyone's rights are at risk. And that's what we're trying to communicate to people. This is not about us versus them or any specific group. This is about how are our leaders and our potential leaders treating Namibians as a whole?
Yes.
Yeah.
How are they treating the Namibian house?
God, that was a long answer.
I love that answer. I was like,
Thank you.
girl, you just gave me all the time to breathe.
My
Mama
little
said,
gift.
I'm going to take a break.
You lean back, girl.
But
It's okay.
I think it's so important to have these conversations. I think even like now, as we're leading up to November for elections on the 27th, I think more of these conversations need to be had, and I think we need more access to these kinds of like things. I think we have your book, like even here, NAM Votes 2024, and I'm like, it's so important for us to like have access to this, and it's so important for us to know what's actually happening in our country, not just be like blinded by the glitz and the glam of all of the other things and trying to figure out like, oh, what's happening in America. No, we need to really focus on what's happening in our own backyard. And as a political analyst, I'm sure you have your idea of what Namibia looks like right now on a political landscape. And with everything that's currently happening, what do you think the future of Namibia looks like? Do we see a future where we're all equal? Do we see a future where we all have the possibility of standing in the sun and just being Namibians? Because at the end of the day, we're really, like you said, we're not fighting to be gay. We're not fighting to be this, or we're really just fighting to be in the Namibian house as Namibians.
Yeah.
So looking at the political landscape, looking at everything with your experience, does that seem like something we can see?
Absolutely. I think that it's important for us to remember that we currently are all equal. You know, we do have these rights that are enshrined and that are like, they cannot be taken away from us. Our Constitution literally has a section that says no law can be passed that actually takes away from our fundamental human rights. The issue, which is what we always have here, is implementation is where we drop the ball. And by we, I mean the people who are in power. So reminding, I think for young people, it's so important in the next however many months until elections and going forward to remind our potential leaders and lawmakers that we are aware of what we are entitled to. And our choices are going to be influenced by that knowledge, that we know that if you are not on side for us being able to flourish in the Namibian house, as you said, then you just simply don't get our support.
Yes.
And so I think it's important for Namibian people to understand what it means for us to all have these rights and for us to be equal, that equality does not take away anybody else's ability to live a rich and full life. Like when we are all treated as equal, like the world is just a better place. We are a better country. We have more potential. We have more capacity to thrive. I mean, so many people will say, like, Namibia is so small and we have so many resources and we have so much potential. So why are we the way that we are? It's like it's really baffling. And I think more and more people are coming to that realization that like it really doesn't have to be like this. And so I think that the more we can see that, you know, there are either people who are on side for a vision of Namibia where the Namibian house is thriving and diverse and we all can just mind our business and
drink
flourish.
our water.
Drink our water, touch grass, go outside. You know, there are people who are on side for that, and those are the people whose support we need. The people who are stuck, you know, in the past and with, you know, loyalty and with respectability politics and with weird conservative ideals.
Morality.
Quote unquote morality. I think that's becoming so much less cool and sexy. People are kind of like getting over that.
It's not chic anymore. Stop trying to make fetch happen, guys.
It's not going to happen. It's not demure. It's not mindful.
It's not it's not cutesy.
So I try to be really positive and hopeful about, like, we do have so much potential, and I think every conversation that we have like this is a step towards, you know, us understanding as the people of Namibia that the power actually lies with us. So are we going to use it to try and hold each other down, or are we going to use it to hold people accountable and move on up?
I love that. Now, just to close off before I let you go officially, I know.
But I live here now.
Yeah, no, you do. Listen, I need the studio to stay hot, so please.
I'll just stand in a corner.
Thank you. It keeps my makeup moist. But of course, we're talking about power, and I think one of my favorite quotes that comes from someone that like I love very much. It's basically, she just says, like, power is not given, it's taken. And no one can give you power unless you go out and take it and take charge of it and take ownership of it. And I think what we're seeing now more than ever is a lot of Namibian youth are standing up and starting to take back their ownership as Namibians, as proud parts of what make this country what it is. And I think when we go to the polls now on the 27th of November, it's important for us all to remember that our voices matter and our vote counts. But if you have anything, any small piece of advice, something that you wish the first time you ever got to vote, because this is the 7th time we get to vote.
Yeah.
For all of our independents, our 7th general election. What is that piece of advice you would wish someone could give you before you make your tick at the ballot box?
That's a great question. And I'm acting like I did not know that you were going to ask me that question. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. You know what I wish? I remember when it was my first time voting. It was like 15 years ago. And the kind of status quo was still, your vote is your secret, guys. Like no one should know. Yeah, no one should know. No one can force you
it's
to
your
say.
Wi-Fi password.
Exactly. And I realize now that there's so much, it gives like a lot of people the opportunity to skip the conversations that we should be having. So I would say your vote is still your secret. You don't have to tell people who you're going to vote for, but you absolutely have to talk about it.
Yes.
You have to talk about it with your friends, with your family, like really try to have conversations to understand why you are voting and what is important to you. So as a young person, an old person, like whoever, if it's your first time voting, if it's your 7th time voting, what are you voting for? Yes. And who is saying the things and making commitments to the things that align with that? And vote with that and not with a sense of secrecy or a sense of defensive-ness, but vote with an open mind and also with a clear vision of what you actually want Namibia to look like. And 91% of us registered to vote, so that's great. The other 9%...
We love you guys.
No,
we still care about you.
But like, we'll
but you
talk
can't
later.
have kapana. You can't have kapana
no,
at the after
invited.
party.
I'm so sorry. But so many of us registered to vote, and that needs to follow through into election day, into action.
Yes.
So know what you want to vote for and talk about it with people, because I think as the moment we all start saying, well, I don't think I'm going to vote for so-and-so, but I know that they want to, so I'm not going to. No, the time for that is it's 2024.
Say it with your chest.
We're all on the internet, babes. Like no one, like why are you keeping secrets? For what reason?
For who?
Like
for
secrets are only benefiting the people who don't want you to talk.
Exactly.
So let's be petty, and let's go to the poll, and let's tell them I'm not the one, not this time.
It.
Yep.
Petty at the polls.
Ooh.
Petty at the polls. Ndapwa, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for sitting down, and thank you for just the work that you do. I always say, like, we really do not give enough flowers to the people that are actually making everything digestible. There's so much work that goes into taking all of these different ingredients, all of these informations, and just funneling it down into a pastry that everyone can take a bite out of. And like, I'm so grateful that you shared with us today. And
thank you so much.
Just keep on doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Now that I can't let you down. So
please.
We will continue. And yeah, please keep your eyes on what Sister Namibia is doing. We're going to be covering elections. We're going to be covering what's happening in the National Assembly. We're going to cover it all. So let's do this.
There we have it.
Yeah.
Ndapwa, thank you so much, and have a
Mavis.
beautiful time.
You too.
Now, of course, everyone, that is our first guest on Pride in a Pod, Ndapwa Alweendo, and we're going to take a quick little break. We'll be right back, and Mama's got another guest cooking up for y'all, so don't worry. She's not going away for too long. But if you are wondering, what can I do in the meantime? Chomi, kyk your calendar, sit down, 27 November, elections. I'll see you at the polls. Hey, petty at the polls. Welcome back to Pride in a Pod with me, Miss Mavis Dash, your fabulous host for episode 2. How beautiful is it that we have not one, but 2 guests today? And our next guest is someone that I love so much. She's my sister. She's performed on Drag Night stage. She does amazing work for the trans movement. And I'm so privileged for her to be here today, and I am just happy. Deyonce Naris is a feminist, human rights and gender activist who specializes in the human rights of trans diverse persons and currently serving as the national coordinator of the transgender, intersex and androgynous movement of Namibia, TIAMON for short, an organization that advocates for the rights and the bodily autonomy of trans diverse persons in Namibia. She's been trained as a human rights defender, has served in leadership roles on numerous youth movements and forums, and has been a radio presenter tackling issues of gender, sexuality, and sex workers' rights, and thus can offer a variety of skills and expertise in these vast areas. Please help me welcome the beautiful, the stunning, the amazing, the talented, the one and only Deyonce. How are you doing, Mama?
Excited to be here. Excited to be joining you on this chair. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. And you like net so mooi, man.
And it's a great hour.
Show me when the legs are out, then you know more. The girls have come to play.
What's on the menu?
Legs. I talk Deyonce. Now, Deyonce, fuck yeah. No, for all of our people listening and for everyone that's watching at home, who is Deyonce and what is it that Deyonce does? What makes the Queen Mother the Queen Mother?
Oh, God, where do I start? Come on, blow your own horn. I get my 5 minutes to peacock. Okay, so what? Deyonce, I guess, is an all-round activist, right? I got into this thing because of my own personal fight as a trans person. So I do trans advocacy, basically doing work around getting people to understand who we are as trans people, what it means to be trans, share some of the stories on trans lives, make sure trans people are getting access to the necessary services that they need to survive. But outside of that, all around, I do work with children, with young people, social welfare work with young women, teenage mothers, so all round freedom fighter, I guess.
Right.
Yes.
Yay.
And then other than that, I also put on beautiful drag shows as an African queen, just trying to bring that African culture to drag night. Yeah.
I think what's so beautiful always, and I think it's what I've learned with my journey as your friend, as your sister, it's been so beautiful to just always see that there's always authenticity. There's always this grace and this beauty and this honesty that you bring to everything that you do. And I think a lot more people need to visit that honest place where they're honest with themselves first so that they can be honest with other people and just heal. And you've healed me. You've healed so many other people. And there's been a lot happening in the country. We all know that they've been trying their absolute best. And we all know who they are. You know BKS. They've been trying a lot of things. And we know that we've been reading in the papers what's been going on. From your standpoint and from the work that you do, would you say that there's been a big shift with everything that's been happening in the media with our people?
So I think there's quite a lot. There's a lot that's been happening. I think the community is a lot more visible. The community is owning a lot more of their narratives. And I feel like there's been a major pushback because of how communities been claiming their rights. And you will see it in so many ways. You see with our organizing spaces being shrunk a little bit more in the way people respond to us. You see politicians becoming more vocal in the way they speak out against the LGBT community in itself. Then you see now with our recent wins, even the community is doing a lot more. We are in court, we are winning cases, and then we see a lot of this backlash happening where they are now introducing discriminatory, unconstitutional bills in parliament, and how that rhetoric is being felt at community level because there's more harassment, more verbal abuse, particularly for communities that live in the more rural areas. Then you'll notice when you look at the Black transgender women's community that's been hit by a lot of violence and gruesome murders recently with people being killed in the most unimaginable and most violent ways. And people will keep saying, because I do a lot of interviews related to this stuff, and then you'll find people sit there and they ask you, are these hate crimes? And I'm like, are you cuckoos?
Like, what else could it be?
What else could it be? When you're seeing 3 transgender women back to back being murdered in the same mannerism, being buried in the same type of way, with the same level of cruelty and aggression when you look at that violence, and you're thinking, how angry can you be to mutilate somebody's body to that extent? So the violence, I guess, to an extent, has elevated. Namibia has really been a peaceful country. I say to people, I get to almost now jet set because of the work that I do. So when you travel around the world and you're exposed and you come home and you're thinking, people say, are you going to leave the country? Are you going to seek asylum? I say, no. I'm not going anywhere.
There we go.
I'm going to stay in this country. This country must accommodate me. They must make me feel as part as any other Namibian should, and that I don't see myself living in any other country anyway, except for this very Namibia, because life here is a lot more safer. It's a lot more, I don't know. I feel like I would not want to live anywhere else, man. This country loves us. This country loves us despite what people make it look like.
Because I think when you really look, like even like with us, like when you say community, you find those allies. You find that movable middle people. You find community. And when you find that, you get to understand that representation matters so much more now than ever before. And you can see it with how many more queer people are coming out, with how many more of our brothers and sisters are stepping out and saying, Ekasiso.
We do this work so that the children can be free, so that the next generation that comes can live as openly and as freely. And mind you, now this generation does not seem to be bothered around putting themselves in boxes, which I think is also primarily part of my work, is degendering and decolonizing our understanding of what our identities are, right? Because somebody came and told us we need to live in this particular parameter and live under this box. And we all jump now, even as trans people, from this box into another box. And we continuously re-perpetuate this violence of patriarchy and, you know, the stereotypes and which just makes it more violent, which, again, this generation doesn't seem to be taking up. They're a little bit more woke. And I think this is the era where that representation is needed so that we can help everybody move along to be able to create these communities where everybody can coexist in peace, love, and harmony.
I love that. And I think a big part of that is also the work that you're doing. Representation. Now, obviously, we know with this new generation, they are on the forefront of everything. Social media has helped them really change the landscape and change the communication and change how we consume information. And I think what's very important always is, when it comes to our communities, is the education around it and understanding what's happening. And your work that you do dives into that a lot of times. But I know that it's quite difficult for trans people to move into the workspace, to actually be able to have seminars like this. What are some of the hurdles that you've experienced, and how do you guys fix it? How do you solve it?
Child, we're basically working with infrastructure that does not exist, right? Everything that we have to do as trans people comes from the roots, from scratch. We have to design and create the language for people to understand us first, right? So we need to go and find the words to be able to say to people, this is how you talk to us, this is the language that you use to us. Even when you look at the education system in itself, right? You know that there has been such a huge pushback against the comprehensive sexuality education curriculum, that people are not getting the information that they should, and probably from a very early age, to be able to understand themselves and their identities, because these things are not being taught at school. Now, and then you look at the education system itself not being accommodative, because, you know, we have issues with school uniforms. We have issues with school toilets. We have issues with the type of information that we're consuming. Mind you, the people always say, with the work that we do, we are always trying to recruit people to being trans because we're providing them, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, no, we're not necessarily recruiting and promoting. What we're doing is creating an enabling environment where people can foster and find themselves. And when they do, we're giving them the language to help them communicate to other people around who they are, because that's the best that we can do. Again, when we were growing up, you know, we only knew there were morphs and lesbians.
Yes, that's the only words we had.
And it wasn't even lesbians; it was tomboys, right?
There was
So when sometimes when I speak to trans people about my journey, I keep saying to them, at some point I identified as a feminine gay man, because the language for me as a trans person did not exist at that point, and it took me a couple of tries and researching and finding language here and there to be able to finally say, hey, Mara, actually, ek is nie 'n feminine boy kini. Ek is 'n vrou. Yeah. And I need to be recognized as such. So when I walk into these rooms, I constantly need to claim my right as a woman. And when I speak, I must attach that political label of trans so that my issues are able to come across, because I will never be able to just speak as a black woman.
Yes.
I need to be able to add that extra label as a transgendered black woman, because the way I experience life from a cis black woman is different.
Yes.
Right.
And it's the importance of like highlighting that difference.
We need to be able
have
to highlight.
And
we
I think,
need to. Even when you look at access to healthcare, for example, we can both work in there as two black women. But when you're going to be tailoring our SRHR services, it's going to be different what my sexual reproductive services looks like than the next woman.
And those things aren't taken into consideration.
And those things aren't taken into consideration. We aren't nuancing the language. I need services for this body, for this body to be able to function. Now, for example, we're walking into October, and October is going to be Cancer Awareness Month. But nobody's going to be talking to transgender women that are transitioning, that have a risk at breast cancer development, right? When we're looking at services such as prostate screening, it is something that this body needs. But when I walk into that space, the language is going to be very male. It's going to be very man. The person that must provide that service to me is going to be a male-bodied person, which necessarily does not understand how he's supposed to address me. So those are the little nuances that need to happen for transgender people to be able to get services adequately and comprehensively.
Now, when we take all of this into account, we understand that, and we all say this over and over again, but we really only can see a change if we vote them out. And if we say that statement a lot. I've heard everyone say it at one point, but when we talk about going to elections, when we're talking about going to the polls on the 27th of November, as a trans woman, when you're sitting down and everyone is walking around and they're like, yes, no, we're going to vote them out. Oh, yes, no, when we vote, then they're going to be able to get our rights. What does that really mean to you? What does it really reflect the same for you as it reflects for everyone else? Because I think it's not. It's not the same.
It's really not, right? It's really not. Looking at government where it is now and trying to get an outlook at who we're even voting for at this point as a community, we're saying we definitely know who we're not voting for, but at this point, we really don't know who we are going to be voting for. Again, that's because there's nobody speaking to us as a community. There's nobody that's actually saying, this is a change that we can achieve for you as a community. Yes, we can get excited as an outlook for the country, right? Because as patriots, we also want to see change. We want to see beautiful things happen for this country. But when you're honed down and you're looking at it specifically as a community, that perhaps one's gender reassignment as something provided by our Ministry of Health, I have not seen an official that gets up and says, this is a right that we can get to transgender people. So when we're now sitting down, and even when we were getting ready to register, right? We were asking ourselves, oh my God, now with whose documents? Right?
Because that's a thing,
Because I have to use this ID to go get registered. And this ID has male on it.
That's a different person.
And that's a different person compared to who I am that's walking in. And we had to, for transgender women, do a mass mobilization and try and get everybody to the registration points on the same day, where you have loudmouths like Deyonce that will not take nonsense from registrations officials. Because I remember I said to the girlies, let me go sit down first and see how it does. And I sit down, and the data entry person, the first point where you get to, takes my ID. She gives it one look, and then she gives me another look, and then she gives me the ID another look, and then she gives me a look, and then she decides she's not going to address it. She continues writing. The guy next to her, though, says, because he was filling in the other form, I think she was doing the national and he was doing the constituency. So he decides to ask, are you a man or a woman? And then I said, I'm a woman. And then he says to me, but your ID? I said, sweetie, you need to go deal with that ministry of yours, that one that we all know is a problem towards queer people, and tell them that story, because I also have a problem with that national identity document.
But here I am.
also want it changed.
Both of us have an issue with it, clearly.
Both have an issue with it, clearly. So if I've been fighting, so maybe you need to get up and go
maybe
fight
you're the
them
right
too.
one.
Maybe you need to go tell them, this is giving me a problem when I have to do my job. But it's not going to be my problem, because this is a document that I clearly need, but your government decides they want to issue it on that, and that's that. I can't fight it. What I can tell you now is that my sex assigned at birth is male. That is why your document says that.
Yes.
But I, that am sitting in front of you, am a woman. You're going to address me as such,
Period.
and you will treat me as such.
And then?
He just sat there. He said, okay, and then continued filling in his form. And then I said to him, there's a couple of my sisters that are also coming, and you're not going to be asking them those nonsense questions. You're going to do what you're going to do so that my sisters have the right to be able to vote at the end of this year. And maybe we will use that vote to create a change so that somebody will get into office and change this goddamn document.
Because, girl, we need it.
It's about time.
It's about damn time.
It's about time.
Now, I wouldn't say necessarily that the gentleman was an ally. I wouldn't necessarily call him an ally, but I think like even in that moment of like asking, like it may not have come off like as the most conducive way to ask the question, but I think that curiosity sometimes can be met like in a different way from like the person saying it. Because like I sometimes feel like people will ask like, no, what is gay? No, ain't. Like, and I'm like, if you ask it like that, you're being rude. Ask like you want to know more, understand. Give me an ally, understand. Make me feel you're an ally.
Ask me a question to understand. Don't ask it from a malicious point of view.
At all, because then I'm not going to
Then-
respond to you with niceness, because I can't be nice the whole time. Do you know
Then
what I
I'm
mean?
going to be sassy. I will give you sass. It's like I get when I remember we had a group of students, university students visit us once, and we took them to single quarters. And they are over there enjoying their kapana, and usually I get anxiety when I'm around too many people. And people will say I'm racist backwards, but too many black people together is problematic. Because our communities sometimes just don't know how to let people be. Sometimes when I leave my house, I'm just trying to enjoy life like everybody else and move peacefully. I'm not
need a
trying to get
word.
hassled, you know? And there's a little one over there sitting in the corner, and they're eating their puppies. So I'm like, hi. And then they go like, hi. And then they continue eating. But after that, they look up at me and then they go, are you a boy or a girl? And then I looked at them and then I said, what do you see?
Oh,
And then he responds and then he says, you look like my mother.
no, sir.
And then I'm like, yes. You
That's
see?
it's mommy.
I am mommy.
Yes, I am mother.
mommy. I am literally mother. Those are my children over there, you know? And then they got it. From there on, it was auntie and auntie and auntie. And I'm literally thinking, if a child can absorb it like that so quickly, why is it so problematic for the rest of you? So when you're asking me that question around, am I a woman or a man? Please ask me because you really want to understand.
Yes, not because it's a
you
mockery
see
or a
this,
joke.
you see this difference, and obviously it can be startling, and now you want to understand. But don't do it because you want to mock me and turn me into a quick joke
that's not
and
what this-
entertain all your friends.
I love that. No, and I think I always find like children to be the purest souls. Like, I think children receive corruption from parents. They receive that.
I maintain parents and community is what goes wrong with the world, because it is how we choose to raise our children. Now, and I raise beautiful babies. I tell you, my kids, when somebody comes to the house, will ask somebody how they want to be addressed, because that's what we've taught them at home. So if somebody walks in, they will rather ask you directly if you've made them comfortable. Otherwise, they will come over and they will say, Mommy, what do I call that one? You know what I mean? So it's literally because, again, when they come into this world, they come in knowing nothing.
Exactly.
They copy and paste and they mimic, and that's how they learn. And so I remember a couple of years ago, and I keep telling stories, shame.
I love a good story,
when-
mama.
My oldest is 13 now, but at that point they were 7. And they came home from school and they were so upset. And I wanted to understand what happened. And then he tells me, no, one of his fellow students said his mother's a morphe. And at first we had to process with him what that meant and why he was so upset about it. And after that, he says to me, now you have to go do at school what you do with your work. So now I'm tasked to go sensitize the teachers at school.
Wow.
So I go over and I have a conversation with the principal. And in essence, I ended up saying, well, you need to bring that parent and the child in.
Yes.
and we sit them down. And before we get started as parents and teacher, mine asks the other colleague, "Hoekom sit jy met ma saam of nie?"
That's it.
Nou stuur die Annie en nee, as jy jou ma verby ons huis loop, dan sê my ma hulle mos daar loop hy moffie en haar kind.
Daar kom het. My ma.
Nou sê myne vir daai enetjie, maar moffie is not a nice word.
That's
You must
it.
not use it against other people.
That's it.
And then they hug it out and it's done. And so I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, so this is redundant.
Like, I don't have to do my job
I
here
don't
today.
have to do my job anymore. The kids have solved it. They can go back to the class before I jump over the table and rip somebody's weave out.
Because this parent is testing me.
Why are you out here saying this type of things in front of kids? Why are you teaching hate towards a kid that clearly does not have any issues with it? Because as they walk away,
Exactly.
he says to mine, he would actually like his mom to be his mom, right? Referring to me being his mom.
like, because,
because
I would be my mama too,
you know what I
please.
mean? Obviously, the things must be happening.
Because that mommy is giving.
This child wants to jump mummies, right?
I know.
So I'm like, yeah. And in the end, we had to end up and sit and talk to each other as women. And I had to say to her, but you're doing more harm
Yes.
than you're doing anything else to your child. Because what you've done is you've turned your child into a bully.
Yes.
Your child comes to school and now they're bullying my child. Which
They see it as normal. They
because
see it
they
as
see
this
it as
is
normal. It's been normalized at home.
Now, when you look at that, we understand that hate is taught, but then at the same time, we understand that we have people that they aren't necessarily part of the community, but we see them as allies. And sometimes that word is kind of like weird for people where they're like, so if you're an ally of the Morphist, are you then a Morphy? And then they're like, no, I'm not. I can be... When people wonder about what it means to be an ally, with what you described now, with that mother clearly not being an ally, but her child showing signs that, hey, if I just had a different understanding of what was going on, I could be an ally. I could maybe be queer. But what does it mean to be an ally? What does a real ally look like?
God, it literally is just that girly that when I walk into the toilet and the other girl is being a problem that says, hey, there's no need for that drama. We're just both trying to use the toilet.
That's it.
That's it. It's literally the girlie that helps me stop the taxi because she's seen a couple of taxis drive by and they don't want to put me in there because I'm trans. You don't have to come to a pride march and pick up a poster. It's not being complacent when you see the violence.
Yes.
It's a simple thing as using your voice. It's as simple as when I have an anxiety because I can't leave the house as a trans person, you can run a quick errand for me, or you can run those errands with me. Just walk with me.
Yes.
That's it. Just be the sister that I need you to be when mommy doesn't understand and mommy's being problematic. Then be that ally that silently. You don't even have to fight mommy. Just silently, no, mommy, doch. She's part of our family. Gradually, mommy will start getting it if you keep saying it. It's my sister. She's not going anywhere.
Yes.
It's my sister. She's not going. You don't need to fight, mommy. Just sit there and say, well, ek weet sy is 'n mof, maar as my sister.
As dan my kaladay.
As my kaladay. Verstaan jy? And sometimes you don't have to have the right language.
Yes.
It's just show up, you know? And while you're busy showing up, you will get the languages you walk along with me. And that's essentially an ally. I don't want to go into a dictionary definition of it. You know, it's when the two little kids are playing and then the other kid that comes from the very cis-het patriarchal house says to this boy, boys don't play with dolls. And then the other one says, no, kids can play with any toy they want. That is an ally. Quick. It's just somebody that steps in the moment, that tries to alleviate, facilitate the tension, the violence. You know, it's as simple as that.
No, I love it.
And I think what I guess the rest of us must do as people that have allies, that have people that want to walk with us, is having the patience for them. Because it took us a while, and it's still taking us time to understand ourselves, for us to just expect the next person to automatically get it.
Exactly.
So we also need to practice a level of patience. Again, another story.
Hey, die story vrou. Maar watertjie drink as jy so lekker stories vertel.
Me and my mother did not talk to each other for like 10 years, right? When I came out. And then eventually we ended up having a sit down to talk about it. And when we sat down to talk about it, my mother says to me, Jay Vietnamese, when you came out, you made it about you. You didn't even consider the rest of us.
Kies jy toe jy gebore is, soos jy kan maak rakatiet ta poritiet.
I know, it's just like even as a child, you know,
You've always
girly used to sit and pee and do the things that needed to get done. So I'm like, but then why were you? Because
why were you shocked? Why were you surprised? You then knew.
Why are you tripping?
Yes.
Why are you out here tripping? And then she says, but you know, also at that point, my dad was the big pastor. She was still getting into the whole pastor thing. And then she says, Yara, you came out the next day, dress full, makeup on, and you were emceeing that show and dancing on this stage. You didn't even give us time to come along. And before we knew it, you were on this newspaper, you were in that news article, you were in this, you were on the 7 o'clock news. We didn't have time to process. You made it about you and forgot about the rest of us. You didn't understand that as ek kerk toe gaan, ek kom daar aan, hier sit die vrouwekring se gullies met die koerant, you're on the 3rd page of the Namibian and you're talking about all this morphy things and sex worker things and what not. So that I think is the moment. And then my younger sibling said to me, I showed up apparently this one day looking all flamboyant, walked in with my heels, crack, into the class, gave the girlie her assignment that she forgot and walked out again so flamboyantly. And she says for the next 2 months, she got bullied at school just for that one appearance that I did, right? And we also don't, I guess, consider the impact that our lives have on other people
Our
around
visibility.
us.
It does. And I think I'm glad that you're actually bringing it up, because I would even just reflect back to like my own life, like with my siblings and everyone, like especially my little brother who's still in school right now, who recently, because of what we do and because we're so vocal and we know we have to be vocal and we need to get more people to understand that we're just people, we're just Namibians, guys, we're just here. But then in the newspaper, daar sit Obuta, and I'm at school, little brother. People are teasing him. People are going to me and saying, "Yeah, gee mos 'n keer ook 'n moffie. Gee mos ook 'n moffie. As jou broer 'n moffie is, gee mos ook 'n moffie." And it's so difficult to like balance that. Like, where do I find my authenticity and how do I stay in that? But then how do I keep these people that are actually genuinely caring about me? Because sometimes that family dynamic is so difficult to understand.
It's very difficult because you also you're trying to walk with the people that want to walk with you, while trying to have the level of patience to bring along others that don't necessarily have their understanding at that moment. And then you also have to get to a point where you are able to say, "Man, Uncle Mike, wil ek kom saamstap hê?" And it's all right. It's fine. At some point, we have to make peace with Uncle Mike and find other ways where we can create our own solace, because we also can't run away from Uncle Mike. Uncle Mike is going to be there at every family bride.
Every Christmas.
He's going to be there at every Christmas. And we're going to have to find a way to survive Uncle Mike. And it's around those safety networks that you then create at home, and making sure that those allies that you have at home are able to say to Uncle Mike, "Ach nee, Uncle Mike, dis nog genoeg.
Hou nou op. Gaan drink nog 'n tekkie. Hou op.
You know what I mean? And the other thing I really wanted to also say is how do I put it? The support, the psychological support that our allies need is something that we don't consider. Even shame. Homegirl went into a relationship recently.
Oh, yes. I've been seeing on the statuses.
And the way I've been experiencing that is a little bit different, because I was now out and proud and I'm public and I'm living my life.
Must be Beyonce.
People walk into the house and they come do interviews, and I didn't realize these things were making my partner uncomfortable until he had to air it. And at some point, I felt like it was an attack on my activism.
Like he wanted to minimize.
Like he wanted me to minimize and not be so public anymore and not be so vocal anymore. And I'm like, Yeah, but this is like the biggest trans mouth in the country. It can't go quiet now, like especially when our last murder happened and we found out, oh, shame, the perpetrator. I lived through his violence for 2 years. He lived just down the street from my house. We were in the same street. And right when that incident happened, there was some people trying to, I guess, break into the house. I don't know what was happening. And then he was like, you need to stop now. You need to stop now. It's literally, it's not only your life anymore. It's endangering my life because now when he walks down the street,
people know.
People know. He's the boyfriend of the girlie that does this work. She's the one organizing the funeral right now. She's the one doing
so
this.
How can we hurt her? Let's hurt her.
Let's get to him. And they literally started getting to him, and I could see him shrinking. He's not going out anymore. He became more antisocial. He's less verbal at home. And then when we sat down and we had to talk about it, he says to me, but you don't understand the impact of the work that you do, that it has on me. Because it's not only that when I walk down the street, now words are being thrown at me, but my family's calling.
Yes.
And they want to find out if I'm okay too, because I live with this loudmouth that's out here doing all this public
Your future
work,
wife is the one doing all of this.
Yes.
Are you good?
Are you good? And mind you, now we're both sitting in a relationship, both parents from church backgrounds. So they are calling each other and they're like, they feel like they need a Jesus intervention for the both of us out here. And I'm like, y'all know I've been going through Jesus intervention since I was 15. If something had changed, you would have done years ago.
You say you can't parade the gay away.
I am beating the average life expectancy of a black transgender woman this year. So obviously something would have changed years ago.
But it's not.
It's not.
Man.
Shame.
But I think what's beautiful is like you've also created such a stunning community of people like that really support and like really stand by what we do. And I think those allies that we look at, and I would love to quote Lisa because you said just show up, and Lisa has the song that is titled Just Show Up, and the lyric goes, just show up, you don't have to be the best, you just have to be there. And I think when we look at allies, when we look at even just people in the community, I think that's the mantra we should walk around with as allies, as people in the community towards each other, even just as normal Namibians. Even if you just see someone, just show up for them.
I feel like it's like somebody said to me once, ja, no, wanneer is jy aan en wanneer is jy af? Abortion is jy daar, sex workers is jy daar,
unemployment
is jy daar, waar is jy aan en waar is jy af? And I'm like, I am not a single issued person. All these issues affect all of us. So let's just show up for each other. And I mean, green hydrogen might not necessarily at this point have an impact on my access to hormone replacement therapy, but it does speak to the economy of the country. So yes, I will show up.
Period. She gonna show up and keep showing up. And we're all gonna be showing up on the 27th of November. That is the polls. And I think we've coined a cute little term here on the show. Be petty at the polls.
Oh, yes.
So we're gonna go be petty at the polls on the 27th. Yeah. But for all of our allies out there, and even just for all of our trans sisters and brothers and any of our queer brothers and sisters out there, what is the piece of advice you want to give them in terms of just why they need to come vote? Because we know that 91% of Namibians are registered to vote. The other 9%, ons is so right met julle, rus eers hierdie beurt, ons kry julle by die volgende ronde. But for the 91% of people in Namibia, those that are allies, those that are anti-us, those that are movable middles, the us's, what do you want to say to them in terms of just why they should go to the polls?
Why? Because we don't want another unconstitutional bill introduced in Parliament. Let's start there. I think we want to go in there and vote so that we can change up those seats in Parliament, so that these people that feel like they have the majority can be humble. They must eat some humble pie. Because they are not doing the things that need to get done for this country to get to where it should be. When you look at how we are organizing and how money is shrinking, particularly for those of us that organize in this space, Namibia should be able to fund civil society where it is right now. Namibia should be able to give young people jobs with its economy where it is right now. And these people are not doing the things. So we need to get to the polls and shake it up. We need to start making these people uncomfortable because they've gotten comfortable. We want our resources to go to where they need to be going. We need people that are making decisions for the people that are actually experiencing the hardships. Not these people that sit there and give us lip service. Now, we are still in checks in Ochamise. Checks were supposed to be eliminated when?
Long ago.
Gone years ago.
Here we
and
are.
all these empty promises just keep coming. So I keep saying to my sisters, they are busy reviewing laws in this country that are yours, and they want to take them away. You need to come out and vote so that these people know that you exist and you have a voice, and that they cannot sit there and feel like they make decisions on our behalf. I think that is the premise of it. That is the premise of vote them out. Because if they were doing something for us, we would have voted them in.
Period.
But at this point, we need to clear that whole house so that we can get fresh blood in there, so that the decisions that need to be made. These people are out here trying to shrink our right to public gathering.
For what? For who?
A whole bill trying to control our right to express ourselves.
Freedom of movement, freedom of everything.
Freedom of movement, freedom of association, freedom of expression. Why? So these are all the reasons why we need to come out and vote. And for the allies, look, you can also see the things that are not happening for you the same way they are not happening for the queers. This is not only
It's a
queer
one-sided
fight.
thing at all.
It's not a one-sided thing. And if they are coming for the queers today, they will come for you tomorrow.
Exactly.
That's gradually how they
Yes.
started. That's how they started when they came with colonialism. That's how they erased my existence as a trans woman. Because I was the custodian of our spirituality on this continent.
Our
And then
healer,
when
our
they wanted to
mothers.
come and introduce their pastors, they said, let's get rid of this ones quick. Now they're doing it all over again.
And we're sitting back.
We keep repeating history, and it's coming and it's coming. And we, unfortunately, in this generation, with these elections, with these votes, are the ones that will achieve that change and put the stop to the people that fought the other people for the rifle just so that they can come and use it against their own. We will not have this dictatorship type of thinking in Namibia. We've never had the place for it. This has been a democracy, and it will stay that way. And we will uphold it. And our allies will accompany us. They will make sure we are safe. They will come with us to the voting polls, and they will make sure that nobody's asking us, are we a man or a woman? And we will be ushered in, we will vote, and we will walk out.
Period. Arima, thank you. I appreciate you so much, Deyonce. I don't know if you know that. I really don't know if you know that.
Thank you. And I appreciate you so much. I think the work that we all do collectively is what will get us to that place where we want to be, that democracy, that free country, that what is it that our national anthem sings about, those liberties, those freedoms that were fought for all of us. I don't think they were, I am sure there is a transcestor in there that was roaring a pot for the men to eat at the army, that was changing a quick bandage. I'm sure there was also one of my girlies that had a rifle in her hands.
Of course.
Yes.
Can you not, with legs like this, how
With
could
legs
we
like
not
my
be running,
darling.
Chomi?
We did the things that needed to get done. Yes.
No. And I think when we're with all of the conversations we're having now and everything, it's such a beautiful time for us to be alive. As much as there is so many crazy things happening all over, what an amazing time for us to be alive right now, where we actually have the opportunity to affect change. We actually have the opportunity to actually say that because of the work we do, because of the efforts that we put in, because of the collective community that we're building, the fact that we're trying to be the Namibian house that we were being promised all the time, I think we really do stand a chance to change something. And I'm so grateful that
we do.
And
I think it will only be when we all get up and do this, right? And I think that's probably why the pushback against the LGBT community is so hectic right now, is because of the visibility and the presence and the refusal to go anywhere and lie back quietly. We are done with diplomacy and talking to you here in the corridors of Parliament, and you keep giving us empty promises. We must now come out and call you out in the streets. It's the only way these things can get done.
Loud and proud.
Yeah, loud and proud. Out and proud. Somebody said the other day, the closet is meant for clothes.
Period. And we've been there for a long time. That's why we dress so lekker.
Yes.
Now, Mother, before I let you go, I just want to once again say thank you for all of the work that you do, and thank you for being such an amazing, I don't even have words, because I'm just like, you're such a beacon of hope, and I'm so appreciative to anyone out there, to anyone that may need help, that may just sit down like right now and listen to what we're talking about and say, but I really do need to talk to someone. I really feel like, as someone figuring out who they are, maybe trans, maybe I'm like, if someone is sitting down trying to figure out where to go from now, how do we get in contact with you? Where do we find support, and how do we support the work that you do?
Well, I mean, generally people can find me anywhere, everywhere. So if you know a queer, there's a queer that will know me, right? just ask them for Deyonce. That's usually how the referrals work. Other than that, you find me all over my social media. You can get me on my contact numbers, via email. Really, the work that we do at TIAMON at the moment is also unfunded. And generally, we don't go around and say, give us money, right? We love to build communities and grow communities. So if you are able to come through and do something small for our community, come through and do it. You don't necessarily have to just give us money. You can come through and offer counseling services. God damn it, I need professional therapists to help my people heal. We go through so much, and it's all layered and it's packed on. And I feel like the healing work is the space where I'm in right now that really needs a lot of support. Oh God, safe housing is a struggle at the moment. I'm literally transitioning people in and out of my house most of the time. So that work needs support. Find us on our social media. You can find TIAMON at Transdiverse Movement on Instagram, TIAMON at Facebook. Reach out to us, and then you have a conversation with us. We will tell you around what we need in that particular moment. God, I can give you a whole wish list right now, right? But the idea is really to do the most that we can with the little that we get.
Yes.
I think that's it. So if somebody needs somebody to talk to, find me, Deyonce Cleopatra Naris, on an Instagram, on a Facebook, and I will find you. I will hunt you down.
Oh,
just drop me
down. Come on, Mariah.
Yes, just drop me a text, a WhatsApp. I will find my way to get to you.
No, thank you, Deyonce. Thank you so much. I love you so much, and I
Thank
appreciate
you for having me, and I love you so much more. We must. We
have a
keep
lot of
doing
things to
this.
come, Mos. You get Mos. Ons planning your volgende jaar. But Deyonce, thank you once again, and just keep on shining. Keep on shining, because you make us shine. Thank you. Well, people, mense, it's kom mama vat gou weer 'n break. But in the meantime, we're going to go cross over to a quick little video, and when we come back, moet ek vir julle bye sê. So sit back, relax, and let's just keep getting ready for the elections. 27 November, singular da meide.
Let's be petty.
Petty at the polls. And there we have it, the end of episode 2. I know, so sad. But don't worry, there's 2 more episodes coming. But before we go away, Mama Mavis has a few gifts for you. So I know we've been talking about elections. We've been giving you all the justs and the hows and the what's is happening. But it's so important that we know that the Electoral Commission of Namibia has created a very lovely little book. Yes, look at these gloves. So lovely to show it off. Now, if you check out this book, you'll have an in-depth understanding of what it means to be a voter. You'll understand where you need to go, how the process works, and all those nitty-gritty. So as jy wil sit en vra, nou Tommy, hoe doen ek die ding? Lees hierdie blou boekie en jy's uitgesort. You can even find it on their website. So check them out at www.ecn.na right now to find out more information. But there's more. Kalakemos Mama Mavis hou van 'n booklet. So Sister Namibia, as we mentioned in the podcast today, has also put together a beautiful little something for us. So if you check it out right now, you'll also have a clear indication of all the party manifestos from back in the day up until now as to what it is that they're saying. Maar nog iets. Ja, nou, julle sê ons lekker goed kommandeer. Hey! So we also developed our own little scorecard on everything that's happening. And as you can see on your screen right now, we've got a little idea of what is happening with the different parties. So stay informed, stay up to date, and make sure that you get yourselves ready on the 27th of November to get to those ballot boxes. So ons kan stem, van julle kemos, period of voting poll is our new look and feel. Hashtag petty at the poll is what we're going to be doing. So I want to see y'all there, dress nice, look cute, and let's just make sure that the 27th of November, the 7th general elections of Namibia, is a day that everyone remembers as the day that the youth, allies, queer people, and Namibians came out to change what Namibia looks like. Remember, your vote counts, your voice matters. En chomi, geniet jou lewe, as Friday in a pod. Bye!